on its path and strength in just a few minutes.
And I'm Jeff Morrow in Charleston, South Carolina, where we're feeling the strongest wind and the heaviest rain that we have seen so far. I'll have a live update in just a moment.
Hello and welcome to Weather Center, sponsored by Oldsmobile. I'm Rich Johnson. Thanks so much for joining us. Our top story today continues to be Hurricane Floyd. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is keeping a close eye on the situation. Earlier today, Director James Lee Witt cautioned people about the serious problem of storm surge as it approaches the East Coast.
This is going to cause some really serious flooding, and we're very concerned about this, and just ask people to watch this very closely. And if you're in low-lying areas and have not evacuated, you need to take heed and do so as they've asked you to do.
Now let's go to Janetta Jones in the Forecast Center with more on Hurricane Floyd.
The winds of Hurricane Floyd have diminished slightly. It is now a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Of course, 5 being the strongest hurricane that you can get. But it is still a force to be reckoned with. It is still a very strong Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Let's take a look at the latest information, and this is the satellite vantage point. You can see that it continues to churn right on up towards South Carolina, and fringes of it are affecting folks along the coast of Georgia and Florida. But it looks as if we are looking at the possibility of a landfall sometime in the overnight hours, somewhere in parts of South Carolina and North Carolina, the coastline. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Right now, as of 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, it is centered about 260 miles south of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Winds are at 125 miles per hour, so that has diminished some since just this morning, and it's moving northwest at 14 miles per hour. A little bit later on, a gradual turn towards the north is expected, but at this point, northwest at 14 miles per hour. Now taking a look at the hurricane watches and warnings. We have a hurricane warning remaining in effect from Titusville, Florida to the North Carolina-Virginia border. That's in the red, including Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds. Hurricane warnings are discontinued south of Titusville, Florida. A hurricane watch continues in effect from the North Carolina-Virginia border to Chincoteague, and that's this area right in here where the lighter orange is. That does include Chesapeake Bay south of Smith Point. Now, interest along the Florida East Coast south of Titusville should exercise caution until the winds and the seas subside. Now, a little farther to the north, we have a tropical storm watch in effect for this entire area, and I want to go over that with you. It's extended northward and is now in effect from north of Chincoteague, Virginia, to Sandy Hook, New Jersey, and that includes Delaware Bay. We also have extensive flash flood watches. This is going to be a huge threat all along the coast with the potential for incredible amounts of rain, 5 inches plus, and some of these areas, including North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, we have already seen as much as 6 to 8 inches of rainfall, so the ground's already saturated. If you're in southeastern North Carolina, Brunswick County, New Hanover County, and Pender County, we have a flash flood warning in effect for you, in addition to the flash flood watch. Doppler radar has already indicated as much as 6 to 7 inches of rain that has already fallen in your vicinity, and numerous streets are experiencing flooding, so it's a serious situation there. We also have the potential for tornadoes. As with any hurricane, the potential does exist for tornadic activity, and until about 10 o'clock local time tonight, we have a tornado watch in effect, and you can expect that to be extended on past that time period probably. Looking at the radar, we can see the heavier bands of rain that have been moving on into North Carolina, eastern North Carolina. That's where the heftiest amounts of rain have been. That's where we have the potential for severe thunderstorms and perhaps even tornadoes. So we're going to keep a close watch on that for you. Well, Hurricane Floyd has already had quite an impact on folks along the coast in Florida. We've had reports of power outages, trees down, obviously. This apartment damage is in Indian Atlantic, Florida. The waves were also very rough there as well. So a lot of folks suffering a lot of problems just in Florida and coastal regions of Georgia. And now into South Carolina and North Carolina, the problems are getting worse and worse, and I'm afraid it's going to get even worse as the afternoon progresses and as we get into tonight. We have a crew standing by in South Carolina, in Charleston. Jeff Morrow is there, braving the elements. Jeff, it's looking a little worse.
Yeah, it is worse, Janetta. This is probably some of the heaviest rain that we have seen within the last 15-20 minutes to a half an hour since the last time I talked to you. It's very gusty. At times, the wind will gust like it is right now a little bit, and at times it backs off. Officially at the airport, the winds have been gusting upwards of tropical storm strength, and I think here within the last 5 minutes we've probably seen some of that. The rain has continued to come down. We may be starting to talk about maybe some flooding problems in and around the Charleston area and some of the other areas of the low country. I'm going to walk over this way. Behind me, over my shoulder, if you can see it in the distance, there is a high overpass. That is a very high bridge over the Cooper River here. All these bridges will get closed once the winds get up over about 40 or 45 miles an hour. And so if you're on that side or on this side, you can't go from one to another once the winds get that high. I'll walk over here a little bit more. I wanted to show you the marina that we've been shooting around all morning here. And again, a lot of boat owners have been coming down here and checking on the moorings to make sure that things are steady. They've been dropping by here to ask, you know, where is the hurricane going? How high is the surge going to be? And a lot of worried people. Obviously, there's a lot of money tied up, literally, with these boats here at the marina, and a lot of worried people. But most folks have evacuated, as we've been telling you, and it looks like with good reason. It looks like we're going to get a pretty strong blow here, even if the hurricane moves up the coast. It's going to be probably at least hurricane force winds, if not a little bit worse. And as I mentioned, the rain's been coming down pretty hard, and it's probably going to be some flooding problems as well. Maybe some trees down on some of the roads. I'm sure that'll happen, and the power outages will follow. None of that being reported yet, but if the winds continue to pick up as the hurricane draws closer, Janetta, I'm sure we're going to start getting reports of that. We'll report to you live on whatever happens here around Charleston. Let's get back to you in the studio.
Thanks so much, Jeff Morrow, reporting live from Charleston, South Carolina. If this hurricane makes landfall anywhere in North Carolina, that will make the 5th hurricane to have struck and made landfall in eastern North Carolina since 1996. In the past 3 years, we've seen Bertha, Fran, Bonnie, and Dennis. And now we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Floyd. For an answer to that question and many more, we go now to the expert desk, and Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert.
Well, thanks, Janetta. We continue to monitor our hurricane, and it's accelerating to the north, and that's going to make it landfall a little earlier than we thought. Let's have a look at the latest visible satellite image. You can see it here, the circulation center. The good news, of course, is that it's weakening with time, and the hurricane reconnaissance hurricane hunters are finding higher and higher pressures near the center, but it's still a very dangerous hurricane, very large circulation. And it looks like it's moving now almost due north, and that trend should continue, and it may drift off to the northeast a little bit, it may not. But either way, the right side of the hurricane relative to landfall, assuming it moved it straight north, this side of the track would be the worst impacted, both with respect to surge near the center, but waves and surge and winds also as it moves inland, and the potential for severe weather as well. Now, it's also possible it could still take a turn a little bit to the west, so down there in Charleston, you're not out of the woods by any means, and you're definitely going to get some stronger and stronger winds out of and heavier rainfall as we go through the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, here's the latest water vapor imagery, and you can see this upper level trough of low pressure here swinging through the eastern United States, pulling the system north, and you can see it dragging the high cloud right along with it, and that's what's going to accelerate it to the north-northeast over time. We do expect it to stay over land, though, and that is good news relative to redevelopment, but it's not good news relative to potential rainfall up the coastline. Now, we're down to Category 3, but we're up in Category 4. Keep in mind that we were a weak 4, now we're a strong 3. The wind damage potential change is very minimal. This is still a very, very high damage potential hurricane, and we need to treat it that way. Don't take your guard down at all. Here's our swath and our time frame here. It looks like late tonight or early Thursday morning is the time frame for landfall, and that may change depending on how fast the system moves. And keep in mind, high tide is at 2:25 a.m. near Myrtle Beach. That would be the worst possible time for landfall because we'll actually have high tide in addition to the surge. We'll give you the latest updates at 20.